and Ghost Towns with Mike Roberts and Bill Barlee.
Welcome to Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. I'm Mike Roberts, and with me is Bill Barlee, our resident expert when it comes to historical locations, British Columbia and northern United States. I thought we couldn't do another story out of the boundary country, but we are today.
Well, Mike, it's one of the fascinating areas of British Columbia, and really the story we're doing today is on Rock Creek. And I've wandered on Rock Creek since I was a kid, so that's over a third of a century. And it was one of the great gold creeks of British Columbia, discovered before the fabulous creeks of the Caribou, way before Atlin. And the first major rush in British Columbia was to the Fraser River and to Rock Creek.
And we drive by it without even thinking about it.
A lot of people don't know much about it.
Yeah.
Very fascinating creek, intriguing history, and I think we'll find it really quite interesting.
Okay, we'll be back in just a second to take a look at Rock Creek and the gold that was found there when we come back from this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. Mike Roberts and Bill Barlee. All this time I thought Rock Creek was just the place that I stopped to have coffee after completing Highway 33 on the way east.
Mike, when you examine the history of Rock Creek, it has a romantic beginning, it has Bonanza Creek, it has murder, it has intrigue. It really has a fascinating history. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it really starts in 1858. Two American soldiers are stationed in Fort Colville. Now, this is important because the year is 1858, and the frontier's ablaze. There's an Indian chief called Kamayakin, who's one of these courageous Indian chiefs from the interior, and he feels that the Americans are trespassing on hereditary Indian lands, and he sets the frontier ablaze. And so these soldiers want to avoid this conflict. They're dispatch riders, and they're told to go to Seattle. So they start skirting what is assumed to be the Canadian-American border, which is really not very well defined yet. So they head north, and then they head west. And as they come up west, they come into a river called the Kettle, which goes back and forth into U.S. territory and into Canadian territory. And along some days into their trip, they come across a little creek. It's supper time. And as luck would have it, they sit down and have supper, and one of these guys goes down to wash the frying pan, and he thinks, well, I got the frying pan, I'll try he's interested in prospecting. You've heard about the Fraser River Rush, and so he tries a couple of pans full of gravel, and much to his astonishment, there's coarse gold in the pan. And so he calls his other dispatch rider, his friend, and they start panning. They're supposed to go straight on to Seattle. They don't go on to Seattle. They stay there for at least 3 or 4 days, possibly longer. They get a very, very good steak. But on the way, like prospectors everywhere, Mike, they can't keep it to themselves.
It's just too good. This news is too good.
Sure.
Right. Okay.
They come across a Canadian. His name is Adam Beam. And Adam Beam is a prospector. He was going to head for the Fraser River. He hears about this. They draw him a map, evidently. And they say, look, stop at this creek. He said, what's it called? And I think one of the miners, one of these original miners, one of the soldiers, was called York. His surname must have been York. They said, it's York Creek. And, of course, it hadn't a name before that.
Sure. Why not? I mean, it's my creek, it's my gold.
Sure. So he takes credit for it.
Yep.
Beam comes onto the creek. He finds the creek and starts going to bedrock like all good placer men do. And he starts taking out nuggets to half an ounce, quarter of an ounce, ounce. It's really spectacular diggings. And he stays at Soldier's Crossing, which he then calls Soldier's Bar. But he changes the name. He says, the heck with York Creek. There's a lot of rock on this creek, and it's a real problem. We're going to call it Rock Creek. So Rock Creek it becomes. And, you know, the first picture we look at here is Rock Creek really in its original. Yep. This is a picture of Rock Creek Camp, 1861. And the first few years, 1858, 1859, and right into 1860, very, very busy camp, Mike. And what happened was this. It is so close to the U.S. border, it is so close, that the Americans come flooding in, they think it's their camp. And this is interesting because what happens in 1860, they're prepared to secede to the United States of America.
They don't make a little jog north of the 49th parallel because this is close enough to ours.
Well, sure, it's close enough they can grab it.
Yeah.
And it's rich diggings, they want it. But word gets to a guy called William George Cox, who's the gold commissioner, very interesting guy. He informs the colonial government, which is really Governor James Douglas. Yeah. Now, this is so serious that Governor James Douglas comes all the way overland, comes into Rock Creek to quell what they call the Rock Creek Rebellion. He gets all these miners together, and they say, you know, we're American miners, and we're going to take this out of Canada, we're going to go to the States. And he says, you're not going to go anywhere. He said, this is British territory. If I have to bring in the Royal Marines, I'll do it. And he lays the law down, and he does lay the law down, and at the end of the speech, they give him 3 hurrahs. So he has really carried the day. Rock Creek stays in Canadian hands, but the interesting thing about the creek is this, Mike. And when we take a look at the second picture here, you'll see that the creek comes down, and this is about 7 miles from its mouth, and here is McKinney Creek joining Rock Creek, which was also called Jolly Creek. So it's joining the main creek.
This is steep, angular country. These creeks are really creeks, very small freshets running down these hills.
Yeah, they are. You know, the creek really goes west, and then it wheels north. Yeah. Into that Mount Baldy country and into the old Camp McKinney and all that fascinating area up there. So it's hard rock country, it's placer country, and all the rest. And what happened was this. So the first members of these guys who come into the creek, they flood into Soldier's Bar. But they find that, you know, there are too many miners. There are about 400 or 500 miners here, Mike. And so they've got to start going up the creek. They go up the creek for a couple of miles, and there's virtually no ground because the bedrock was too deep. So they go up past Johnson Creek, and they get a little bit of gold at the mouth of Baker Creek, a little creek coming in here. But as they make that big wheel, that turn up towards the north, they start coming across spectacular ground. This is just great ground. It's bonanza ground. It's ounce-a-day diggings. And ounce-a-day diggings, Mike, means that the average guy was probably making about 75 cents a day. Suddenly they're making $16 a day or $15 a day. So they're making 20 times their ordinary salary. Yeah. And this is just astonishing. This means that today it's equivalent to about $1,000 a day. It is really quite spectacular.
Bonanza gold, as you said it. What do they call this bar?
Well, the second bar they hit is White's Bar.
White's Bar.
And that's named after an American miner called White. And it is several thousand ounces come out of White's Bar. And then they go up the creek, and then they go up the creek, they find high diggings on either side. Then they come to the best bar of them all. And this is Denver Bar. Yeah. A guy from Denver, Colorado discovered it. He names it Denver Bar. They get nuggets there, Mike, up to 6 ounces, 1/2 Troy pounds. And they get 5,000 ounces at a Denver Bar. But the gold stops abruptly at Denver Bar, just like you're drawing a line there. So they're confused by this, and we'll get to this later on. But what they do is they keep on going up, and they go right up to what was called the Old England property.
Yeah. When you say, for example, that the